to Marcus, the problem child who finally showed up. My mother raised her wine glass and smiled at the packed dining room. 23 relatives turned to stare at me. Some laughed, others looked away. My stomach dropped as the words hung in the air like smoke. This was Thanksgiving dinner, and she had just labeled me in front of everyone. My face burned. My hands shook under the table. For 32 years, I had been the scapegoat in this family. But this felt different. This felt final. My mother continued talking, spinning stories about my troubled past and how difficult I made everything. The room buzzed with uncomfortable energy. I wanted to leave. I wanted to scream. But I sat frozen, watching her perform. Then something unexpected happened. Grandma Beatrice, who rarely spoke at these gatherings, reached for a leather folder beside her plate. The room noticed. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. My mother's smile faltered. Grandma's weathered hands opened the folder slowly, deliberately. Her eyes met mine across the table with something I had never seen before: determination. The silence became absolute. My name is Marcus Sullivan. I'm 32 years old, from Portland, Oregon. If you want to hear more stories like this, please subscribe to this channel. What happened next changed everything. Grandma stood up slowly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Every eye followed her movement. She adjusted her reading glasses and pulled out a stack of papers from the folder. Her voice, usually soft and gentle, cut through the silence like a blade. "Patricia, you've been telling that story for years." She looked at my mother, but I have documents that say otherwise. My mother's face went pale. She tried to laugh it off, waving her hand dismissively. "Mom, not now. This is Thanksgiving." But Grandma ignored her. She began reading from school records, old letters, and dated documents. Each piece contradicted my mother's narrative. The room shifted from comfortable mockery to uncomfortable tension. Uncle Howard leaned forward. Aunt Melissa's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. My cousin Brian, who had always believed the stories, looked confused. Grandma's finger traced down a page. March 15th, 2008. Marcus was suspended from school for fighting. She paused, looking up. What Patricia never mentioned was that he was defending a special needs student from bullies. The principal recommended him for a character award. My mother's jaw tightened. That's not how I remember it. Grandma smiled thinly. Memory is interesting that way. She set down the first document. This isn't everything. My mother shot up from her chair, her napkin falling to the floor. Her face flushed red, voice rising sharply. This is favoritism, pure and simple. You've always had a soft spot for Marcus. You're rewriting history to make him look better. She pointed at Grandma accusingly. I was there. I raised him. I know what happened. The family exchanged uncertain glances. Years of believing one version made them hesitant to accept another. My brother, Trevor, shifted uncomfortably. My sister, Amanda, stared at her plate. The doubt was visible, spreading through the room like ripples in water. I remained quiet, absorbing everything. This was not my moment yet. I had learned long ago that defending myself only made things worse. My mother always twisted my words, made me sound aggressive or defensive, so I waited. Grandma remained calm, unbothered by the outburst. She sorted through more papers with steady hands. The folder seemed endless. Finally, she looked directly at me. Her eyes were kind but firm. The room held its breath. Marcus, she said quietly but clearly, tell them what you did for your father during his illness. My heart stopped. That was private. That was mine. But Grandma nodded encouragingly. She knew. She had always known. I took a deep breath, my voice cracking slightly. Dad had stayed for cancer for 18 months before he died. The room went still. I took him to every chemotherapy appointment. I managed his medications. I stayed overnight at the hospital during his worst episodes. My mother interrupted. We all helped. I continued, my voice stronger now. I rearranged my work schedule. I drove 4 hours every weekend. I was the one who held his hand when he was scared. Tears stung my eyes, but I pushed on. Mom told everyone she was his primary caregiver. She posted about it on social media. She accepted sympathy and praise. But I was there, in the hospital room, every single time. Uncle Howard leaned back, processing. Aunt Melissa's expression shifted from doubt to recognition. My brother Trevor looked at me with new eyes. My mother's face twisted with anger and something else. Fear. "That's not fair," she said, her voice shaking. "I did what I could. I was managing the house, the finances, everything else." Grandma's voice cut through. "You were managing your image, Patricia." The words landed like a judge's gavel. My mother stood abruptly, her chair tipping backward. "This dinner is over. Everyone needs to leave. Now." But nobody moved. I stood up calmly, pushing my chair back. The room watched me with different eyes now, questioning eyes instead of judging ones. "I'm going to go," I said quietly. Nobody tried to stop me. My mother looked relieved. Grandma gave me a small nod of approval. I grabbed my jacket from the hall and walked out into the cold November evening. The drive home was silent except for the hum of my car engine. My hands gripped the steering wheel as everything replayed in my mind. At a red light, I pulled out my phone. There was an old voicemail I had saved from 2 years ago. Dad's voice, weak but clear. "Marcus, son, I want you to know something. Your mother tells a different story to everyone, but I see the truth. You've been the strong one. You've been the good one. Don't let her rewrite that." His words had sustained me through the funeral, through the aftermath, through every family gathering where I was a villain. I saved it back to my favorites and drove home. That night, sitting in my apartment, I made a decision. This was the last time I would stay quiet. The last time I would absorb blame that wasn't mine. Tomorrow, things would change. The pattern started when I was 10 years old. My parents had a massive fight about money. Dad had made a bad investment, and they were struggling. At school, my teacher asked why I seemed distracted. I mentioned my parents were stressed about bills. Somehow, that became Marcus is spreading private family business and embarrassing us. The narrative stuck. When I was 15, I got accepted into a prestigious summer science program. Mom said we couldn't afford it. Later, I found out she had spent that money on a vacation for herself and my sister. When I asked about it, I became ungrateful and entitled. At 18, I got a full scholarship to college 3 states away. I was excited. Finally, distance. But Mom told relatives I was running away from family problems and too immature to appreciate what I had at home. Every achievement was reframed as selfish. Every boundary was labeled as rejection. Every time I succeeded, the story changed to make me the problem. I kept journals, saved emails, documented everything. Not because I planned to use them, but because I needed proof for myself. Proof that I wasn't crazy. That my memory was accurate. Now, sitting in my apartment, I walked to my closet and pulled down a locked file cabinet. My hands trembled as I inserted the key. Inside were years of evidence. The cabinet was organized by year. Folders labeled in my handwriting, chronological and detailed. But underneath my files was something else. A folder I had found after Dad died, hidden in his office. It was labeled in my mother's handwriting. Marcus Issues. My stomach had turned when I first discovered it. Inside were financial records, correspondence, and documents I didn't fully understand then. Now, 2 years later, I pulled them out again with fresh eyes. Bank statements showing money transferred from my college fund to my sister's wedding. Emails between my mother and my former employer from 8 years ago, asking about my reliability right before I was passed over for a major promotion. Letters to family members, spreading stories about my instability after I set boundaries and stopped attending every family event. The pattern was clear. Every time I grew independent, every time I succeeded, every time I moved away from her control, she undermined me, always legally, always subtly, never direct enough to confront, but consistent enough to damage. One document caught my attention. A letter dated 15 years ago, discussing a job transfer I was offered to Seattle. I had been so excited. It was a huge opportunity. Then suddenly, the offer was rescinded. No explanation. I had always wondered. Now, staring at my mother's signature on a letter to my supervisor, claiming I had family health issues and was not in a position to relocate, I finally understood. The job transfer to Seattle would have changed my life. It was a senior position at a tech firm, double my current salary, and completely across the country, away from the family narrative, away from her control. I remember the phone call when HR rescinded the offer. They had been apologetic, but vague. Due to concerns raised during our background process, we decided to go another direction. I had been devastated, confused. I knew my work was solid. My references should have been excellent. For years, I believed I had somehow failed. That maybe I wasn't as competent as I thought. That maybe my mother was right about me being problematic. Now I knew the truth. She had interfered. She had contacted them. She had planted doubt. The letter was carefully worded, expressing concern as a worried mother about my recent stress and family obligations that might affect my performance. It was poison disguised as care. But the letter had witnesses. It was copied to someone named V. Patterson in HR. I sat at my computer and began searching. Victoria Patterson was still listed on the company website, now Vice President of Human Resources. I drafted an email, professional, direct. I explained who I was, referenced a position from 15 years ago, and asked if she remembered any unusual communication regarding my application. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. 3 days passed. I went to work, came home, and waited. No dramatic confrontations. No angry phone calls. Just quiet, patient waiting. On the 4th day, Victoria Patterson replied. Her email was brief but significant. She remembered. She still had files from that period. The company policy was to retain correspondence involving hiring decisions for 20 years. She remembered finding my mother's letter strange at the time, but protocol required them to take family concerns seriously, especially regarding mental health and reliability. She asked if I wanted copies of everything. Yes, I wanted copies. I also contacted my former school counselor, Mrs. Hernandez, who had retired but still lived in town. We met for coffee. I brought my grandmother's documents and some of my own. She listened carefully, her expression growing sadder with each revelation. Marcus, I remember you, she said finally. You were one of my most responsible students. But your mother was very involved, very insistent about certain things. What things? She hesitated. She wanted documentation of behavioral issues that I never observed. She pushed for diagnoses that didn't fit. When I refused, she went to principal. I felt sick. Did it work? Mrs. Hernandez shook her head. Not officially, but it created a file. A perception that followed you. She agreed to write a statement. Factual, documented, truthful. Slowly, carefully, I was building something. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, my mother called a family meeting. Her voice on the phone was tight and controlled. We need to talk about what happened, as a family. My brother Trevor texted me separately. She's freaking out. Something's different. I agreed to come. When I arrived at my parents' house, everyone was already there. My mother sat in Dad's old chair, positioned like a throne. My siblings, aunts, uncles, and cousins filled the living room. Grandma sat in the corner, quiet but observant. My mother began immediately. I've been deeply hurt by recent accusations. I've given everything to this family, and now I'm being villainized for trying to hold us together. Her voice cracked with practiced emotion. I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes, but I've always acted out of love. She looked at me. Marcus, I know we've had our difficulties, but this campaign against me needs to stop. Campaign. That word. As if I had been plotting against her instead of simply surviving her. I stayed calm. I had prepared for this. I'm not campaigning against anyone. I said evenly. I'm just not accepting blame that isn't mine anymore. She smiled sadly, playing to the room. This is exactly what I mean. You always make yourself the victim. Silence. But this time, the silence felt different. Trevor was watching me carefully. Amanda looked uncertain. Uncle Howard's arms were crossed, but not defensively. Doubt was spreading. My mother continued talking, but she was nervous. I could see it in the way she fidgeted with her ring, the way her stories started overlapping and contradicting. At Thanksgiving, she had said, I was suspended 3 times in high school. Now she said twice. Small details, but Trevor noticed. Amanda noticed. She said I had abandoned Dad during his illness, but now she admitted I visited sometimes when work allowed. The room felt the shift. After an hour of her monologue, people started leaving, making excuses, needing to get home. As I walked to my car, Trevor caught up with me. Hey, can we talk? We stood in the driveway under the streetlight. He looked uncomfortable, but determined. What she said in there, some of it didn't match what she said at Thanksgiving. I waited, and I've been thinking about Dad's illness. You were around a lot more than she said. I remember now. His admission felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. What else don't we know? He asked. I pulled out my phone and showed him Victoria Patterson's email. He read it in silence. His face went pale. She tanked your job? 15 years ago. He looked at me differently now. What else is there? A lot, I said, but I'm not trying to destroy her. I just want the truth out. He nodded slowly. I think we deserve that. A week later, Mrs. Hernandez's written statement arrived in my mailbox. It was 3 pages, typed and notarized. She detailed every interaction with my mother during my school years. The pressure to diagnose me with behavioral disorders I didn't have. The insistence that I was troubled, despite evidence showing otherwise. The attempts to create an official record of problems that would justify the family narrative. Most damaging was this paragraph. In my professional opinion, Marcus Sullivan was a well-adjusted, responsible young man who struggled under the weight of parental expectations that were impossible to meet. His mother's repeated insistence on pathologizing normal adolescent behavior raised concerns about her motivations. However, as a school counselor, my authority was limited. I regret not intervening more directly. That record had been used to justify years of mistreatment. Every time I protested being called problematic, she could point to school concerns. Every time I said I was being treated unfairly, she had documentation suggesting I was unstable. It was brilliant in its cruelty. I made copies of Mrs. Hernandez's statement and added it to my growing file. But I didn't share it yet. I was still building, still gathering. The truth needed to be complete and undeniable, not fragments that could be explained away or dismissed. It needed to be overwhelming. Then I discovered something that changed everything. I was reviewing Dad's will and estate documents with a family lawyer, Mr. Kendrick. He had been Dad's attorney for 30 years. During the meeting, he mentioned something casually. Of course, your father modified his estate plan significantly 5 years before his death. I sat up. Modified how? Mr. Kendrick looked surprised. Your mother didn't discuss this with you? No. He pulled out files, looking uncomfortable. Your father's original will divided everything equally among you and your siblings. But 5 years before he died, your mother convinced him to make changes. My chest tightened. What changes? Your inheritance was restructured into a restricted trust, accessible only under certain conditions. Your mother was named trustee with full discretion. The justification documented in the amendment was your financial unreliability. I felt like I had been punched. I've never been financially unreliable. I've had the same job for 12 years. I own my apartment. I have savings. Mr. Kendrick nodded sympathetically. I expressed concerns at the time. But your father was very ill, and your mother was very persuasive. Where's this money now? Your mother has been the trustee. Technically, she's managing it for your eventual benefit, but the trust terms are broad. She has significant control. I left his office shaking with rage. Then I called Grandma. Did you know? I asked. Yes, she said quietly. And I have my own plan. Grandma invited me to her house the next morning. She lived in a small cottage by the river, filled with family photos and the smell of lavender. We sat in her kitchen with tea. Your grandfather and I knew what Patricia was doing, she began. We watched it for years. But parents don't want to believe their daughter is cruel. She pulled out another folder. This one was newer, organized differently. 3 years ago, I established my own trust, separate from anything Patricia could touch. I named you as the primary beneficiary, but there was a condition. I waited. The condition was that the truth had to be disclosed to the family. Publicly. Completely. No more secrets. No more revised stories. She slid the folder across the table. I documented everything I witnessed. Every time she twisted a story. Every time she blamed you for her choices. Every conversation where she admitted manipulating situations. My hands trembled as I opened it. Letters, journal entries, recorded phone conversations with her permission. Years of evidence. Why didn't you say something sooner? I asked. Because she's my daughter, Grandma said, tears in her eyes. And I kept hoping she would stop, that she would see what she was doing. But she never did. And now your father is gone, and she's still doing it. She gripped my hand. This condition must be fulfilled publicly, at a family gathering. The truth, all of it, must be shared. When? Soon, she said. Very soon. 2 weeks later, Grandma invited the entire family to Sunday dinner at her house. Her invitations were not optional. When Grandma Beatrice asked, you came, my mother tried to decline, claiming she was too hurt by recent family tensions. Grandma's response was firm. Patricia, if you don't come, everyone will know why, and they'll know what I have to show them. She came. Everyone came. The dining room was packed. Extra chairs borrowed from neighbors. The good china set out, but the atmosphere was tense. People sensed something was coming. My mother sat rigidly, her smile forced. My siblings looked nervous. Uncle Howard and Aunt Melissa whispered to each other. We ate in uncomfortable small talk. Weather, work, anything but the obvious tension. Then, as dessert was being served, Grandma stood. She tapped her water glass with a spoon. The room went silent. Thank you all for coming, she began. I know the past few weeks have been difficult. Stories have been told. Questions have been raised. And I think it's time we had complete honesty. My mother's face went pale. Mom, please, not now. Grandma's expression was gentle but immovable. Patricia, I gave you chances. Multiple chances. You chose this path. She looked around the table. We're going to start where the lies began. And we're going to follow them all the way through. She opened her folder. Grandma laid out a timeline on the dining room table. Documents arranged chronologically. Dates, events, and contradictions mapped out like a murder board. 1998, she began. Marcus is 10 years old. Patricia tells a family that he's been stealing money from her purse. She uses this to explain why they're financially struggling. She pulled out a bank statement. In reality, Patricia had drained their savings account for a kitchen renovation without telling anyone. My mother interrupted. That's not... Let me finish, Grandma said firmly. 2003. Marcus is 15. Patricia tells everyone he's been expelled from school. He wasn't. He was suspended for 1 day after defending another student. The principal recommended him for a character award. She held up the letter. 2008. Marcus gets a job offer in Seattle. Patricia contacts a potential employer and sabotages the opportunity. She documents this herself in a letter. Victoria Patterson's email was shown. 2015 through 2017. Marcus's father is dying. Marcus is his primary caregiver. Patricia posts on social media, accepting praise and sympathy, while Marcus does the actual work. She pulled out hospital visitation logs. Dad had kept them. Every single visit. My name appeared hundreds of times. My mother's appeared less than 20. The room was silent. My mother stood abruptly, her chair scraping. This is a setup. You're all ganging up on me. My mother's voice rose, shaking with emotion. But this time it wasn't controlled. It was raw. Desperate. You want to know the truth? Fine. Yes, I told stories. Yes, I made things easier for myself. Because I was drowning. I had a husband who was never home, kids who were demanding and no help from anyone. She pointed at me. Marcus was always a difficult one, always questioning, always needing attention. Do you know how exhausting that is? The mask was slipping. I gave up everything for this family. My career, my dreams, my life. And what did I get? Criticism, judgment. Marcus always made me look bad just by existing. The room sat in stunned silence. She was admitting it, not apologizing, but admitting I deserved to be appreciated. I deserved to be the hero. So yes, I adjusted some details. Made myself look better. Made him look worse. Is that so terrible? Uncle Howard spoke up quietly. Yes, Patricia, it is. She looked around, searching for support. Amanda wouldn't meet her eyes. Trevor was staring at his plate. Aunt Melissa shook her head slowly. For the first time, no one defended her. No one made excuses. The silence that followed was absolute. My mother realized it too. Her face crumbled. But instead of apologizing, she sat down, arms crossed, defiant. Grandma looked at her with deep sadness. I'm going to give you one chance, Patricia. One. Admit what you did. Apologize. Make this right. My mother's jaw set. No. Grandma nodded slowly, as if she had expected this. She turned to me instead. Marcus, I have something your father wanted you to have. I was instructed to give it to you when the truth came out. She handed me a sealed envelope. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter in Dad's handwriting, dated 3 months before he died. I read it aloud, my voice cracking. Dear Marcus, if you're reading this, then Mom has finally shared what I've asked her to keep safe until the right time. I need you to know something. Your mother has spent years rewriting our family story. She's made you the villain because it was easier than facing her own choices. But I saw the truth. I saw you sacrifice your time, your opportunities, your peace to help me when I was sick. I saw you stay quiet when you could have fought back. I saw you be the man I tried to raise you to be. You have more integrity in your little finger than most people have in their entire body. Don't let her lies define you anymore. Don't carry blame that isn't yours. I'm proud of you. I always have been. Love, Dad. I set the letter down, tears streaming down my face. The room was silent, except for my mother's sharp intake of breath. She stood to leave, grabbing her purse. I don't have to listen to this. But Grandma's voice stopped her. Sit down, Patricia. We're not done. My mother froze. Grandma's tone carried authority that couldn't be ignored. I said, we're not done. She gestured to the chair. Slowly, my mother sat back down. Grandma pulled out legal documents. 3 years ago, I established a trust, a significant trust. It included property, investments, and assets that were mine to distribute as I saw fit. My mother's eyes widened. She was finally paying attention. I made Marcus the primary beneficiary, but I included a condition. The truth had to be shared with the family. Publicly. Completely. She slid the documents across the table. As of this morning, my attorney filed the final paperwork. The condition has been met. The trust is executed. My mother's face went white. You can't do that. I already did. The trust includes the cottage, the rental properties, the investment accounts. Everything I built separately from your father's estate. Grandma's voice was calm but final. You've lost control, Patricia. Not because anyone took it from you, but because you refused to tell the truth even when given the chance. My mother looked around desperately. This isn't fair. She's my mother. That money should what? Grandma interrupted. Go to someone who spent years lying and manipulating? No, Patricia. It goes to the person who has shown integrity and character despite everything. My mother stood again, but this time no one tried to stop her. She walked out, slamming the door. No one followed. The room exhaled collectively after she left. Aunt Melissa spoke first. I'm sorry, Marcus. We should have seen this sooner. Uncle Howard nodded. We believed her because it was easier than questioning her. Trevor reached across the table and gripped my shoulder. I'm sorry, man. Really sorry. Amanda was crying quietly. I knew things didn't add up, but she's our mom. I didn't want to believe she'd do this. One by one, family members apologized. Not dramatic apologies, but real ones, acknowledging what they had missed, what they had allowed. Grandma sat back down, looking exhausted but relieved. This wasn't about punishing Patricia, she said to everyone. It was about stopping the cycle, about making sure Marcus could finally live without that weight. She looked at me. You deserve better. You always did. I stayed for another hour, talking with family members who asked questions, who wanted to understand. The conversations were hard, but honest. When I finally left, the sun was setting. I drove home slowly, windows down, breathing in the cool evening air. My phone buzzed repeatedly. Texts from Trevor, Amanda, cousins I hadn't heard from in years. All reaching out, all apologetic. But there was one call. My mother. I let it go to voicemail. Then curiosity got the better of me. I listened. Her voice was different. Smaller. Broken. Marcus, we need to talk. Please. Over the following weeks, the family dynamics shifted dramatically. Invitations stopped going to my mother. Holiday planning happened without her input. Phone calls went unanswered, not out of organized spite, but natural consequence. People were hurt, betrayed. They needed distance. Amanda visited me at my apartment one evening. We talked for hours about our childhood, revisiting memories with new context. I remember when you got suspended, she said. Mom made it sound like you were this violent kid. But you were protecting someone, weren't you? I nodded. A kid with Down syndrome. Bullies were tormenting him. She looked sick, and she made you into the bad guy. Trevor started inviting me to events that previously excluded me. Barbecues, game nights, family gatherings that happened without our mother. It felt strange. After years of being isolated, I was suddenly included. Grandma checked in regularly. How are you handling everything? I don't know. I admitted. I thought I'd feel triumphant, but I mostly feel sad. That's because you're not cruel, she said. You wanted truth, not revenge. 3 weeks after the dinner, my mother called again, and again, and again. Finally, I answered. What do you want, Mom? Her voice was desperate. Please, Marcus. I need help. No one will talk to me. I'm alone. I made mistakes, but I'm still your mother. I listened to her beg. Part of me wanted to hang up, but another part, the part Dad raised, couldn't. I met my mother at a coffee shop. Neutral ground. Public space. She looked smaller somehow. Older. Tired. We sat across from each other. Cups untouched. Thank you for coming, she began. I didn't think you would. I stayed quiet, waiting. I've had a lot of time to think. About what Grandma showed everyone. About what your father wrote. About everything. She twisted her napkin. I was wrong. About so many things. I let my own insecurities and fears turn into something ugly. I hurt you. I know that now. I watched her carefully. Do you? Yes, she said, meeting my eyes. I do. I was jealous of how easy things seemed for you. How naturally good you were. It made me feel inadequate. So I tore you down to make myself feel better. It was the most honest thing she had ever said to me. I can forgive you, I said finally, but I can't forget, and I can't go back to how things were. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. I need boundaries. Real ones. No more manipulation. No more lies. If you can't respect that, then we can't have a relationship. I can do that, she whispered. I will do that. I stood up. We'll see. Start by apologizing to the rest of the family. Not to get them back. Just because it's right. I walked out, feeling lighter than I had in years. Not because she apologized, but because I finally drew a line and held it. 6 months later, we gathered for a small family reunion at Uncle Howard's house. Nothing dramatic. Just food, conversation, and normalcy. My mother was there, but different, quieter, more careful with her words. She apologized individually to family members. Some accepted easily. Others needed time. But she didn't push, didn't demand, just gave them space. During dinner, my cousin Brian pulled me aside. "I wanted to thank you," he said. "For what?" "For staying kind through all of this. You could have burned everything down, made her life hell, but you didn't." I shrugged. "That's not who I want to be." "That's exactly why Grandma chose you," he said. Later, as people were leaving, my mother approached me. "Marcus, can I say something?" I nodded. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but watching you these past months, how you've handled everything, you're a better person than I ever taught you to be." I smiled slightly. "Actually, Mom, you did teach me, just not the way you intended. You showed me exactly what not to become." She absorbed that, then nodded. "That's fair." We didn't hug, didn't make promises about the future, but there was something new between us. Not trust yet, but possibility. Maybe that was enough. As I drove home that evening, I thought about Dad's letter, about Grandma's folder, about all the years of carrying blame that wasn't mine. I was finally free of it, not because I destroyed my mother, but because I refused to let her destroy me. Grandma's trust was officially transferred to me 3 months after that dinner. I became the executor, responsible for managing properties and investments she had built over decades. The money was substantial, but that wasn't what mattered. It was what the trust represented. Validation. Proof that someone saw the truth. Mr. Kendrick walked me through everything. Rental properties that needed management. Investment accounts that required oversight. It was overwhelming. "Your grandmother left very specific instructions," he said. "She wanted you to use this not just for yourself, but to help others. She established a scholarship fund in your father's name for students who overcame difficult family situations." I reviewed the details. Everything was structured to ensure fairness and transparency. The exact opposite of how my mother had operated. I worked with Mr. Kendrick to expand the scholarship fund. We created criteria for students who had been scapegoated, misunderstood, or who had overcome family toxicity. We made the application process simple and judgment-free. The first year, we awarded 5 scholarships. Students who reminded me of my younger self. One of them, a girl named Taylor, wrote me a thank you letter. "I've been told I'm the problem my whole life. This scholarship tells me someone believes otherwise. Thank you." I framed that letter, hung it in my office. It reminded me why the truth mattered, why fighting for it, even when it hurt, was worth it. I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight finally lifted. 3 years later, Thanksgiving arrived again, this time at my apartment. I had invited everyone, but made it clear, no drama, no performances, just family trying to be better. My mother came, bringing a pie she had made herself. She sat quietly during dinner, participating but not dominating. Trevor brought his new girlfriend. Amanda came with her husband and their baby. Grandma sat at the head of the table, watching everyone with satisfaction. Before we ate, Trevor raised his glass. "I want to make a toast to Marcus, who showed us what real strength looks like. Not fighting back, not seeking revenge, just standing firm in the truth." Everyone raised their glasses. Even my mother. We ate turkey and stuffing. We laughed at stories. We talked about the scholarship fund and the students it had helped. At one point, my mother caught my eye across the table. She smiled, a small, sad smile that acknowledged everything between us. I smiled back. Not forgiveness exactly, but peace. Later, as people were leaving, Grandma pulled me aside. "Your father would be so proud," she said. "You didn't destroy her. You outgrew her. You let the truth do the rest." I helped her into her coat, my hands steady, my conscience clear. After everyone left, I stood in my kitchen washing dishes, looking out at the city lights. Free. Finally, completely free. Not because I had won, but because I had refused to keep fighting a battle that was never mine to begin with. I chose peace. I chose truth. I chose myself. And that made all the difference.